friends, I am doing the coffee and book lovers tag. Now, you know, if you've been following my channel, that I did a coffee tag, a coffee lovers tag not too long ago. Well, this tag is completely different than that. This tag is hosted by a whole list of channels, so I'm going to read them off, and then I will have the names and the links to their channels in the description box below. But part of doing this tag is I need to mention these channels, so I'm going to do that. There are 8 hosts for this tag. The first one is Ingrid, and her channel is Mommy and Mia Homeschool Chronicles. Michelle from Pick and Flip. Maureen from Mabid, I hope I spelled that or said that right, M-A-B-I-D. Carolyn from Domestic Passions. Juniper Rose Jones, and her channel is Just Maria D. April from The Simple Rugged Path. Deborah from The Paper Maid. And Marky from Life as Mrs. Cooks. So those are all the hosts for this tag, and I want to thank them for putting this tag together because it was a lot of fun to do and to share. So hopefully you have fun watching. The idea behind this tag is there are 11 topics, and the first part of the topic is a type of coffee, and then the second half of the topic is something to do with books that kind of relates back to the type of coffee. I think you'll understand what I'm talking about as we go along. So number 1, the type of coffee is light and sweet. And then this is the question that I am to answer. Name a book or series that the content is light and friendly for all readers. So you get what we're talking about here? The topic of the book or the genre of the book goes with the type of coffee. Got it? Okay, good. So for number 1, I picked the Little House on the Prairie series. I've loved these books ever since I was a child. I loved the television show that was on back in the 70s and 80s, I believe. And I have loved reading these books to my children. My kids grew up with me reading this series to them. It is a wonderful series of books. They are based on a true story. They are written by Laura Ingalls Wilder, who this is her life that she's talking about. And so this would fit the light and sweet category. So number 2, black. Name a book that was rough but a great read. And for that book, I have to go with Unbroken. I saw this originally, the movie. I saw the movie, and then I realized when I found out that the movie was based on a true story and based on this book. I got the book for Christmas, I think 2 years ago, started reading it on Christmas Day, and I could not put it down. But the reason why I would say that it's rough is it was based on the true story of Louis Zamperini. Go on. It was based on the true story of Louis Zamperini, who was in World War II. He joined as a very young man. He was actually in the Olympics. He was an Olympic runner. He did not win a medal, but he was in the Olympics. And he was shot down over the Pacific, and he survived in the ocean for I can't remember how many days. Then he was finally rescued, and he was actually picked up by the Japanese, and so he was in a Japanese prisoner of war camp until the end of the war for several years. And it's the story of his experience, and it was really hard to read because some of the things that happened to him were very graphic and very hard to comprehend. The language, there was a couple of really bad words in it, but it was not like full of bad words. There was a couple of bad words in it, so that's just a FYI warning. But in the end, obviously he lived through the ordeal to tell his story, and it was also the story of his redemption in Christ and how the Lord saved him and kept him through this whole thing, how he battled post-traumatic stress disorder after he got out, became an alcoholic, and how the Lord brought him through all of that, and how he ended up serving the Lord at the end of his life. And so it's just a really, really good read. I would recommend this for anyone high school age and older, if you don't mind your children reading really tough topics. Number 3, Pumpkin Swirl. Name a book that gets more popular during a specific time of season. Of course, it has to be The Night Before Christmas. I've loved this story ever since I was a kid. When my children were little, I would read them this story every Christmas Eve, right before they went to bed. And so this has been a family favorite. And of course, it's very popular during the holidays. Number 4, Decaf. Name a book that you expected more from. Now this book was one that we did as a read aloud when I was homeschooling my kids as part of their required reading as high schoolers. And I didn't like the book at all. And that was Lord of the Flies. I think it's one of those books that you either love it or you hate it, and I hated it. It was interesting, and it kept you kind of on the edge of your seat, but the ending was terrible, and some of the things that happened in the book were terrible, and I really expected, more from it. I expected more of good prevailing evil and not the other way around. If you haven't read this book, I won't do any spoilers, but if you have read the book, then you know what I'm talking about. Number 5, Espresso Shot. Name a book that was nail-biting from start to finish. Well, I couldn't just name one book in this because the book was a series, and the series are The Hunger Games. The Hunger Games series. I loved these books. They're so much better than the movies, and they are definitely nail-biting from beginning to end. These are great reads for high schoolers and young adults and people of any age. I don't remember that there's any bad words in it. I don't think so. Some of the things that happen are pretty graphic. If you've seen the movies, then you'll know what I'm talking about. But overall, I really enjoyed these books, and it's one of those books that I could read again and again. Number 6, Iced. Name a book that needs more sizzle. And I guess what I took from that meant it needed to have more action, it needed to be more captivating. And this was another one that we did as a read aloud with the kids when we were homeschooling, and it's Adam of the Road. Now, I wouldn't say that I hated this book or that it was, terrible or anything like that. It was just kind of boring at times. And there were times when it was really easy to read and get through, and then there'd be a chapter where it was just really boring, and the ending was kind of anticlimactic. And so, yeah, it needed more sizzle. Number 7, Drip. Name a book that you are currently reading that is taking forever to finish, or name a book you have read that felt like forever to finish. Again, another read aloud that I did with my kids when they were high schoolers. Jane Eyre. This was the hardest book to get through. The kids hated it. They thought it was boring. They didn't want me to read it, but it was part of an English assignment that we had to do. And so we did it. It was written in Old English. They'd said half a page of words to make one sentence worth of sense. It was very, very hard. I didn't think I was ever going to get done with it or ever get through it, but we did, and we can always say that we read Jane Eyre. Number 8, Hot Chocolate or Hot Cocoa. Your favorite read-alouds with your kids. Well, as you could tell from my previous answer, we've done a lot of read-alouds. Now, my two favorite read-alouds, I couldn't find my copy of my books, so I'll just put a little picture of the books up here. I don't know what happened to them. I think maybe I loaned them to somebody and they never gave them back, and I can't even remember who I loaned them to. But my two favorite read-alouds that I did with my kids was To Kill a Mockingbird and The Yearling. I loved those books. I didn't know what to expect with To Kill a Mockingbird, and the first couple of chapters was a little bit dry and kind of hard to get into, and I thought, oh great, it's going to be another Jane Eyre experience. But it was such a good book, and I loved it. And then we watched the movie, the old movie that I can't remember, Gregory Peck I think was in it, the old black and white. We loved it. The kids loved it. It was a great experience. And if I ever find my copy, I will read it again, or I may just have to buy another copy because I really loved that book. And then The Yearling, oh my goodness, I cried when I read that book. And my kids were like, "Stop crying, Mom." This was back when they were like 6th, 7th grade. "Stop crying, Mom." But, you know, it was such a sad book, but it was so good and it was captivating. It kept our attention, and it was just a really great read. Number 9, French Vanilla. Name your favorite foreign book or author. My favorite, this is another one that's a series, foreign book, and the author's foreign as well, are the James Herriot series. And I have all of his books, and I've read all of them, and I loved all of them. And if he has any other books out there I don't own, I'm not sure about, but I've got all of his main books. And if you don't know who James Herriot is, he was an English vet, and he practiced, it was pre-World War II up until, I'm not sure when he retired, but he practiced veterinary care in that time period. And he went into the country. It was a very rural place, and it was back when there was lots of farms and lots of big farm animals, and the vets would actually go to the farms and tend to the animals there. And it's just his memoirs of his experiences as a country vet in Britain during that time period, the 1940s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that time period. And it's just awesome. It's a little bit hard to read at times because he actually does use the vernacular of the period and of the area. And so some of the words, as an American, I didn't really know what he was saying. But once you get used to reading it and maybe look up the words online, you figure it out. And your brain actually starts, you know, for me anyway, I was actually like reading it with a British accent in my brain. But I loved these books. They were so much fun, and I learned a lot too. I learned a lot about animal husbandry and what it was like to be a vet in the rural country of England. Number 10, House Blend. Name your top 3 book genres. Well, if you haven't already gathered from the books that I've shared already, I would have to say that my number 1 top genre would be historical fiction or historical fact, I guess, the novels, the true life stories, but of historical content. I love books about history, about real people, about their life experiences of different time periods. I mean, like the Little House on the Prairie books, the Unbroken book, the James Herriot books are all novels, but they're based on true stories, and I just love that. That's probably my number 1 favorite genre. So it's historical fiction, but not necessarily just fiction. I love science fiction, but I don't read that too often. It has to be captivating. It can't be a lot of really off the wall weird stuff, but kind of sci-fi, softer sci-fi, you might want to say. And then my last is mystery. That's another one I don't read too often, but I do enjoy a good mystery story. Number 11, T. Name your favorite poet or share your favorite poem. My favorite poet is James Whitcomb Riley, and he wrote many books, but this is one of the books that he wrote. The reason why I like him is that he was a Hoosier. He was from Indiana. He was an Indiana native, and he wrote a lot of his poems about life in Indiana and different things like that. So I just really like James Whitcomb Riley. So I want to thank all of those ladies for putting this tag together and hosting it. And it is an open tag, and I can tag someone if I wish. And I am going to tag one person specifically, but if you do enjoy books and reading and want to do this tag, feel free to do it. I will have all of the questions or topics of conversation in the description box below. But I am going to tag Kim from Kim's Country Corner because I know she loves books. She was a teacher for a long time. She worked in a school library, and so she can probably come up with some really great answers to this tag. I hope you enjoyed this, friends. I had a great time going through my mind of all the books that I've read. I used to be a really avid reader. I don't get a chance to read as much as I used to, but I enjoy books, enjoy adventures, and going on adventures through the written word. So I want to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a really great day. We'll talk to you later, friends. Bye-bye.